Well, Week 9 is now finished. On to Week 10. Week 9 ended last night, of course, with the New Orleans Saints beating the Philadelphia Eagles 28-13. And to me, that should be, I don't know if it will be, but it should be the final nail in Andy Reid's coffin. Andy Reid's time in Philadelphia has clearly come to an end. This team is bad and getting worse. Reid has already pulled out all sort of desperation stops, firing defensive coordinator Juan Castillo a couple of weeks ago. Even though the defense had outplayed the offense this year, that was the case again last night. The defense holding this New Orleans Saints offense to 28 points. I'm not saying the defense played well, but coming into last night's game, I was backing New Orleans. And if you'd have told me that New Orleans was only going to score 28, I would have been a little concerned about that bet because the Saints had the worst defense in the entire league. We mentioned yesterday on the video preview for that game, the Saints coming into that game last night giving up 474 yards per game. That was 56 more yards per game than any other defense in the league. So they were far and away the worst in the league. Yet, Philadelphia only managing 13 points last night, not able to protect Michael Vick. He was under fire all night. When he wasn't under fire, he didn't look that good anyway. So Michael Vick's time in Philly might be done. I think Andy Reid's time in Philly most definitely is done. If not before the end of the season, then definitely after the season is over. And these Eagles, they are disintegrating. I would not rely on these Eagles for the rest of the season. I'm going to stay far, far away from the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure they're still playing hard. They don't look like it. It's. I'm not saying they've quit, but the last couple of weeks, it wasn't just last night, but their intensity hasn't looked like it's matched their opponents to me. And maybe it's easy for me to say, obviously, sitting back on the couch watching these games, but that's just my honest observation. Don't like what I'm seeing from the Philadelphia Eagles right now. They fall to 3-5. Saints won to improve to 3-5. And I have great faith in the New Orleans offense, but I do not believe the Saints are going to be able to salvage this season. When you look at their upcoming schedule, too tough. They have too many losable games, and with the defense they have, I just don't see the Saints being able to come back and making a playoff push this season. But 3-5 is better than 0-4, which is where they said a few weeks ago they've now won 3 out of their last 4 ball games. But again, Week 9 is now done. Let's talk about some of these Week 10 games. Got a good slate of games for Week 10. Want to go through a few of them now, starting with Thursday night with a game that I'm going to be at in the flesh. Indianapolis Colts coming right here to Northeast Florida to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Colts currently installed as a 3-point road favorite in this game on BETDAQ. And if you're looking at this line and saying, does that line feel kind of low? Indianapolis only -3 in this spot. You're not the only one. I got a text last night from a buddy of mine who's out in Vegas who's from Jacksonville and is a Jaguars fan. And he said, I see the Colts are only a 3-point favorite here. Should I mortgage the house and bet it all on Indianapolis? And I said, the house, no. The car, yes. Okay. The Jacksonville Jaguars are absolutely terrible. They're the worst team in the league. Apologies to the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Jacksonville Jaguars are the worst team in the NFL right now. 0-4 at home. They've lost their 4 home games by a combined 92 points. That is the worst point differential from any team through 4 home games in 13 years, not since the 1999 Cincinnati Bengals, who lost their first 4 home games by a combined 100 points. Has the team been so pathetic at home? Obviously, they haven't covered yet at home this year, and again, they're getting some respect at home. Only 3-point underdogs against an Indianapolis Colts team that's on a roll. Colts winning again last week to improve to 5-3. Andrew Luck, their rookie quarterback, setting a rookie passing record, throwing for 433 yards last week. No rookie in NFL history has ever passed for that many yards. And this week he goes up against the defense, 27th in the league in total defense, 26th in points allowed. The Jags are bad on defense, but unfortunately for them, the defense is the strength of the team because this Jacksonville offense is the single worst offense in the NFL. There's no argument. I said a few minutes ago the Jags are the worst team in the NFL, and I guess there could be an argument there. People would argue for those Kansas City Chiefs because they're just about as bad. There is no argument as far as offense goes. The Jags only generating 250 yards of game of total offense, not passing offense. Total offense, 250 yards a game of total offense. That is last in the league by a wide margin. They're also last in the league in passing offense, and not surprisingly, points scored, only averaging about 14 points a game right now. So really, really tough to take any positives from this Jaguars team right now. And I know from the outside looking in, a lot of people are going to look at this Thursday night game and say, well, you've got a team that's been embarrassed 4 weeks in a row, or 4 home games in a row anyway. Their last real chance, a primetime game, their last primetime game of the season, their only primetime game of the season, against a team they've beaten already this year. The Jags' only win this season, coming over Indianapolis a few weeks ago in Indianapolis. So I could see an argument for the Jags. I could see people saying, hey, Indianapolis might be a little overvalued at this point. People getting on that Andrew Luck bandwagon, and Jacksonville, an angry team, backs against the wall at home, at primetime stage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand that. I understand why people would make that argument. However, I live here in Northeast Florida. I'm around Jaguars and Jaguars news every single day. I listen to local sports talk radio. I read the local paper. And because of that, I have not bet against or for the Jags one time this year. I've completely stayed away from them because I've thought, well, maybe my proximity to the team has sort of influenced my opinion, polluted my opinion of this team. I'm not able to be objective. So I've stayed away, unfortunately, because I've thought the Jags were going to be just as bad as they actually are. I should have been betting against them nearly every week. Even though I say that, and coming into this last game, they actually had a winning record against the spread. They were actually 4-3 against the spread. But all of their success has come on the road this season. We talked about their futility at home, returning home on Thursday night. I have zero confidence in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I can tell you that there is no positivity or little storylines that people might not know about on a national level, that local people might know about, like people returning from injury, or maybe the Jags, maybe the team has played better over the last couple of weeks and people who haven't seen them have realized. No. There's none of that. They actually were much worse in the last game, the loss to Detroit, than the final score would indicate. They were down 24 points when the Lions started using just a shell defense, stopped going after Blaine Gabbert. Jags tacked on a couple of garbage time touchdowns to make the score look somewhat respectable when the truth of the game was anything but. So I do lean towards Indianapolis here. I do think Indianapolis is probably a little overvalued and overrated. I've bet against Indianapolis 2 straight weeks. Lost both times, by the way. Lost last week betting against them in Miami. Lost the week before betting against them on the road in Tennessee. So it's not like I'm any great Colts fan. I've been doubting this team all the way. But on the road in Jacksonville, I'm not doubting the Indianapolis Colts. I do lean towards Indianapolis -3 in this ball game on Thursday night. Another game I want to talk about, another team that has been a big surprise, maybe as big a surprise as the Colts, that's the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay last year lost their final 10 games. They were 1-9 against the spread in those games. They looked like they completely quit on then-coach Raheem Morris. Well, they brought in Greg Schiano, the longtime collegiate coach at Rutgers, and Schiano has run things a little differently than most NFL coaches. This guy runs it more like a college program. He is a my way or the highway type guy, very direct, not a player's coach. He's run a few guys off the team before the season started. Brian Price, a talented defensive tackle. Kellen Winslow, the tight end who led the Bucs in receptions last year, ran those guys off. Just a couple of weeks ago, Aqib Talib, probably their most talented defensive back, definitely their most talented cornerback, shipped him off. The New England Patriots picked up Aqib Talib. So Schiano keeps discarding these players. They're talented, but he doesn't think their attitude fits in with the team, and we've seen the result. It works. The Bucs have been better and better as the season has progressed. Now 6-2 against the spread. They've been an absolutely great team to back. Won their last couple of games to even their overall record at 4-4. They host the San Diego Chargers this week, and they're a short home favorite. Tampa, a 3-point favorite in this game. And when I look at this game, these are two teams I had evaluated completely differently coming into the season. And on both of these teams, my evaluation has now taken a complete 180. The San Diego Chargers coming into this year, I thought they were a team that a lot of people were sleeping on. I picked the Chargers to win the AFC West. They were 8-8 last year, but I don't know. I just thought a lot of people were forgetting about this team. Just 2 or 3 years ago, a real contender in the AFC, thought to be one of the favorites in the AFC. They had a good front seven on defense. Phillip Rivers back on offense. Even though they had lost Vincent Jackson, we had heard that Antonio Gates was as healthy as he's been in years. Phillip Rivers has been in that same Norv Turner offense for several years now. A lot of continuity there. Just expected to see the Chargers have a good season this year, so I was not surprised when I saw them start off at 3-1. And Tampa Bay thought they were going to be bad this year. I mean, it was tough to look at Tampa heading into the season and say, oh yeah, they're going to be a really good team. I mean, even the optimistic Bucs fan, I would think, was adopting a more wait-and-see approach. But now here we are through 9 weeks of the season, and I just talked about Tampa. They've turned into a good team, very solid team. You got to like what you've seen from them. And San Diego, boy, are they a leaky ship. I know they won last week against the dreadful Kansas City Chiefs, but 2 games prior to that, the 7-6 loss to Cleveland in a game they had to have. A couple weeks prior to that, giving up a 24-0 halftime lead to the Denver Broncos. Phillip Rivers looks really bad this year. Not just this year. the last year and a half. I mean, I guess he played better last week against Kansas City, but Rivers had big turnover problems for the last year and a half. In saying that, Tampa is bad in the secondary, so you'd think if Phillip Rivers is going to have a good game, it would be in a place like this. Tampa struggles stopping the pass. And I guess that's the reason why the line is so low here, because Tampa's strength, running the ball, we've seen Doug Martin really break out over the last couple of weeks, one of the stars in the league. With all the talk about Robert Griffin III and Andrew Luck as possible Rookie of the Year candidates, what about Doug Martin of the Tampa Bay Bucks? But San Diego's strength on defense is stopping the run. Josh Freeman, though, and that Tampa passing game, they've got it going too a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But still, the strength of the Bucks is running the ball. The strength of the Chargers is stopping the run. The Bucks' weakness is stopping the pass. And the Chargers, I'm not sure if you can call it a strength because they haven't done it very well this year, but that is what they try to do on offense. They are more of a pass-first team. Still, sitting here right now, and it's way early in the week. Obviously, it's Tuesday. Don't start making any final decisions on these games until Friday or Saturday, but the Bucks seem like the better team over the last couple of weeks. I mean, the Bucks are the better team. Tough to trust San Diego on the road in this spot. I lean towards Tampa -3. Next game I want to talk about, the most suspicious line of the week, in my opinion. You know, if you're familiar with what we do here on BETDAQ NFL, I talk a lot about suspicious lines. You know, when you look over these lines at the beginning of the week, Monday or Tuesday, there's always a couple that stick out, that sort of make you scratch your head and say, why is this team only favored by this much over this team? This week there's a game like that. It's clear. It's clearly suspicious. Clearly, odds makers are baiting you to bet on the favorite in this game. And it's really tough not to bet on the favorite in this game. I'm talking about the Denver Broncos going on the road to face the Carolina Panthers. Denver only a 3.5-point favorite on BETDAQ right now. Now, Denver, they've been getting it rolling over the last couple of weeks. A little bit of a slow start to the season. Started off 2-3. Played a tough schedule there at the beginning of their season, but they're now 5-3. That offense is really rolling. Peyton Manning looks like Peyton Manning in his prime to me. I mean, at the beginning of the season, like everybody else, I was trying to poke holes in Peyton Manning. I was saying, well, his arm doesn't look quite as strong. He's not throwing it downfield as much as he used to in Indianapolis. The balls are fluttering a little bit. But you know what? I'm through. I'm done trying to poke holes in Peyton Manning. Watch this guy play the last 2 or 3 weeks. And this Denver Broncos offense to me is starting to look just like the Colts circa 2004, 2005, 2006. Really, any of those great Colts offenses. That's pretty much what the Broncos are starting to look like. Carolina, even though they pulled out a win last week against Washington, they've been terrible this season, 2-6. And that offense still was not able to get going last week. I mean, even against the Redskins defense, the Redskins have the worst secondary in the NFL, 32nd in pass defense. Cam Newton and that Carolina passing offense was still not able to get it clicking, not able to get it rolling. Denver's defense has improved this year, so it's tough. I mean, how do you make a Carolina argument here? It's very difficult. The best Carolina argument to me is this line is so suspicious, such a head-scratcher. Haven't even seen the way the public money is trending out in Vegas this week or on BETDAQ, but I will bet you right now on Tuesday, having not taken one look at it, that in 3 days we'll look at this game and we'll say, this is one of the most, if not the most popular public bets of the week. People are going to love the Denver Broncos in this game, I can guarantee you, which might be enough to scare me off of the game. I certainly wouldn't be enough to put me on that Panthers side. Because, again, been really impressed with Denver over the last couple of weeks. I mean, all 5 of their wins have been by 8 or more points. So when the Broncos win, they win. It's not like they've been pulling out, not like they've been squeaking by, not like they're a team like, the Philadelphia Eagles where all their wins have been really close, or the Tennessee Titans, their 3 wins come by combined 7 points. You look at Denver, if you look at those teams, Philadelphia, Tennessee, you might say, well, the 3.5 points could really come into play here. But, man, seems like Denver should beat Carolina by more than 3.5 points. But a very suspicious line. We'll be keeping our eye on this game, be keeping an eye on the line movement throughout the week, on the public money, where it's going. I have a good idea where it's going to go. But Denver at Carolina, a head-scratching line indeed. Now, another game I want to talk about, no doubt this game is going to get a lot of play in the national media throughout the week because, hey, the Jets always get a lot of play in the national media. And the Jets are going on the road this week to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle installed as a 6.5-point favorite in this game on BETDAQ. Seahawks coming off a great win over the Minnesota Vikings. That was a key game for both teams. We mentioned coming into that game, Seattle was 4-4. And really the their momentum had slowed. They got off to such a great start to the year. They were 4-4 coming into the game last week, and if they had lost that game, it would have been tough not to look at this Seattle team and say, well, how are they improved over what they were last year? You know, for a couple of years now, the Seahawks have been a team with a good defense and a good running game that struggled to pass the football. And even though Russell Wilson's played well this year, Seahawks are still 31st in the league in pass yards per game. So that's still the perceived weakness of this team. And if they had dropped to 4-5, you would have said, well, here they are again. Good defense, good running game, can't pass the ball, 7-9 or 8-8 or whatever they'd end up being. But Seattle pulled out a good win last week over Minnesota, and I do think this Seattle team is better than they have been over the last couple of years. I've become a believer in the Seattle Seahawks, especially at home. How do you not believe in this team at home? They've not lost a home game this year. As good as any team in the NFL at home. New York Jets going out west. I lean towards Seattle here. Seattle, a 6.5-point favorite. I guess I understand why the line's that low. The Jets coming off a bye week. The Jets' backs are against the wall. The Jets have been a team this season, when you've written them off, you know, they haven't been quite as bad as people thought they were going to be, or as the narrative on the New York Jets has been. Because all we've heard about the Jets all year has been negative, negative, negative. How bad can this team be? But they're actually 5-3 against the spread, despite the fact that they're 3-5 overall. So they've been a decent team to back. So a lot of people selling the Jets short. However, Seattle, to me, that defense, I don't know how New York is going to be able to move the ball on offense. Mark Sanchez apparently starting again this game. I believe that's a mistake. I've not been one over the last 2 or 3 weeks to say you've got to put Tim Tebow in there. I thought that Mark Sanchez has played well enough since the Houston Texans game to sort of hang on to the job. But after a terrible performance last week and another loss, to me, if I were a New York Jets fan, I would be saying that it is Tebow time right now. And the main argument for that is Mark Sanchez, all the Sanchez defenders, because you can't defend his performance this year. He's near the bottom of the NFL in every statistical category, every major quarterbacking statistical category. I'm talking about quarterback rating, completion percentage, yards per game, touchdown to interception ratio. Sanchez is near the bottom of the league in every single one of them. But Sanchez defenders, they've all said, well, look what he's working with. He's got nothing to work with. You know, what can he do with this wide receiving core, with this running game? Well, that's the exact argument you should be using for why Tim Tebow should be playing. Yeah, you're exactly right. Mark Sanchez, very limited with what he can work with on offense, has almost nothing. Well, guess what? Tim Tebow is a guy who, despite what you might think of his passing ability or whatever, he can create offense on his own. He proved it last year throughout the year. Proved it against the New York Jets. Drove his team, the Denver Broncos, 90 yards down the field to beat the New York Jets. And he created a lot of offense on that drive on his own, including the 20-yard touchdown run. I mean, Tim Tebow is a guy, when he's pressured, when things break down, when there aren't receivers open, he can run. He can run, get you 5 yards, 3 yards, 10 yards, 20 yards, whatever it is. We saw it last year in Denver, and Tim Tebow's 16 starts. Okay, he's passed for 2,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. 2,900 yards, not a whole lot in this modern NFL, and 16 starts, but he's rushed for over 800 yards, 12 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is, not only does he pass the ball, doesn't pass for 300 yards a game, even though he has had 3 300-yard passing games in his career, but he's a guy who's going to get you some passing offense, but he can run the ball. It's like having another running back there. So with how much trouble the Jets have had generating any offense, seems to me at 3-5 now with a bye week, it's Tebow time. Time to turn to Tim Tebow. I don't believe they're going to do that, though, at least not for the beginning of this game. But if this game plays out the way I think it might play out, that is Seattle just shutting down the Jets offense in the first half and going into the locker room with a 14-3 lead or something like that. You never know. This game, I know we've been saying it for a couple of weeks now, this game out in Seattle could be the end of the Mark Sanchez era in New York, because like everybody else, I think that once Sanchez hits the bench, his time in New York is over. I do not believe you can put him on the bench and then go back to him later, which is why, by the way, I believe the Jets have been so slow to put him on the bench. But anyway, you gotta, in my opinion, you gotta lean towards Seattle minus 6.5 here. Even though Seattle's limited offensively and the Jets have a good defense, I guess if you're a Jets backer in this game, that's going to be your main argument is, hey, Seattle 31st in the league in total offense. They can't pass the ball. They run the ball well, but they don't score a whole lot of points. They don't gain a whole lot of yards. They don't pass for a whole lot of yards. The Jets, with a bye week to figure out this Seattle offense, should be able to really clamp down and limit them. And maybe so. But I still have an early lean towards Seattle in that ball game. Last game I want to mention here, without a doubt, the marquee game of the week. Really, really looking forward to this one. The Houston Texans going on the road to face the Chicago Bears on Sunday night. These two teams, two of the best teams in the league, maybe the two best teams in the league, even though I know the Atlanta Falcons would have something to say about that because they're the only undefeated team in the league. But Houston and Chicago, both 7-1. You look at these two teams, impressive on top of impressive. No weakness on either one of these teams. Houston, second in the NFL in points scored, fourth in the NFL in points allowed, and the Bears are third in the league in points scored and second in points allowed. So these are two excellent offenses, two excellent defenses. The Bears installed as a 1-point home favorite in this game on BETDAQ. Wow, what a game this is going to be. You know, all year I've been doubting the Bears a little bit because of their quarterback, Jay Cutler, but one thing the Bears have done this year that not a whole lot of people have talked about, but over the last few weeks, really ever since their only loss to the season, a disastrous loss to Green Bay where Cutler had one of his Cutler-type games, interceptions, sacks, looking surly on the sideline, you know, not seeming to show his teammates respect, not seeming to care about winning or losing. A typical Jay Cutler meltdown performance like we've seen from him several times over the last 3 years. Well, that was the only time he's done that this season, but since then, the Bears, and some of it's because they've led a lot of their games, like last week when they jumped out to a huge lead over the Tennessee Titans, but the Bears have largely taken the ball out of Jay Cutler's hands. You might have noticed, or you might not have noticed, but the game plan on offense has become a lot more conservative over the last 4 or 5 weeks for these Chicago Bears. They've realized that they can really run the ball. I mean, hey, they can pass the ball too, and in the beginning of the year, they were throwing it around a little more. You know, their shiny new toy, Brandon Marshall, the wide receiver they acquired from the Miami Dolphins. Jay Cutler, of course, has the arm certainly to throw it all over the yard. And so it looked like in the first couple of games, the Bears were sort of giddy with all the new weapons and a little bit more high-flying on offense. But what we've seen over the last few weeks, they've been pounding the ball. They can run the ball, so they figure, why not become a run-first offense? As a matter of fact, Chicago, this might surprise you, they're 29th in the NFL right now in pass yards per game. 29th in the league in passing offense. That's not because they can't pass the ball. It's just because they haven't been passing the ball because they haven't needed to. They run the ball so well with Matt Forte and Michael Bush. The Bears have really turned into a run-first, smash-mouth type team, and I think we're going to see more of that against Houston on Sunday night. I do not expect Jay Cutler to throw it around 40 times in this game. I think we're going to see from both teams, by the way. Houston, very much the same. About 3 years ago, you would have looked at this Texans team, and most people, I think, would have called them a pass-first type team. Not anymore. They can still pass the ball, similar to Chicago. Matt Schaub, Andre Johnson, certainly, they can still pass the ball. But this is a run-first team. The strength of this team is Arian Foster and that offensive line. And even though Chicago has a great front seven on defense, the Texans are really going to test that defense. Don't know which way I'm going to go in this game. Don't know if I am going to have a bet on this game, but I'm going to try to because I'm really looking forward to this game. Again, on Sunday night, the whole world will be watching one of the better NFL games we've had so far this season, the Houston Texans going on the road to face the Chicago Bears. Well, that's a few of this weekend's games. Of course, there's plenty more, and we'll be previewing them all here on BETDAQ NFL. If you haven't checked out BETDAQ NFL yet, we wholeheartedly encourage you to do so. Everything on there we think you'd want if you're an NFL fan, if you like to bet on NFL football. We have it here on BETDAQ NFL. News, picks, previews, and hey, you can bet right through the site. So check it out. Again, we'll be previewing all these games on BETDAQ NFL throughout the week. Until then, I'm John Arnette for BETDAQ NFL.